What's going on, everyone? Today we're looking at the PSP Go, one of my favorite, if not my favorite handheld. And there's quite a few reasons for that people might not be aware of. Or you might not be aware of much of anything about this device because I don't think it's sold very well. And it was ahead of its time in some good ways and some bad ways. So without further ado, let's get right into it with this device. Now, as I said, this is the PSP Go. This is the last PSP model. Although I think there's a chance the PSP Street came out after this did. But we're going to leave the PSP Street right where it belongs, and that's on the streets, because that thing's a piece of garbage. Nobody likes it. Moving on. So this is the PSP Go. Obviously, as you can see, this is a sliding device. This came out in the tail end of the era of sliding and flip phones. So personally, I like the design a lot. I love things that have a mechanical touch to it, something that slides, something that moves, something you can fidget with. I really appreciate that. I really like it. I think it's cool design, which is why I also like newer and more modern like flip phones and folding phones, etc. But this device is obviously a lot different from the regular PSP. The screen is not quite as big. The buttons are closer to each other and smaller. And look at that little thumbstick right there. Even compared to the one on the PSP, it's kind of tiny. So this is a device that is, I think, really and truly an actual pocketable handheld. Something you could actually slide into your pocket and not notice it. You could put the PSP into your pocket, but people are seeing that thing. And they're going to ask some questions, and you're going to have to let them know that it is a PSP in your pocket and not something else. Moving on with that, though. The biggest issues with the device and why this device didn't do well at the time is because, obviously, as you can see, due to the thinness of the device, it has nowhere for physical media to go in. And the PSPs played these little mini discs called UMDs, if you weren't aware. And they're really just little tiny discs, a little bit smaller than like what you might expect a GameCube disc to be. They just pop right back in here, and the thing played the disc, whether it be a game or a movie. This device, the PSP Go, obviously does not have that. It's an all-digital device, and I think it came out in 2009. So being an all-digital device in 2009 was kind of a big deal. There weren't many other devices, especially gaming devices, doing it. In fact, I think there were no other gaming devices doing it. But I think they were trying to catch on the trend of the iPods at the time. Right. iPods were just becoming popular, especially I think that was around then the iPod Touch started becoming a thing. I know the iPhone came out in 2007, so this was 2 years after that. So I think we might have had an iPod Touch by then already. If not then 1 year later. But it was trying to capitalize on that. Oh, here's a shiny, new, stark white device. It's all digital. It's sleek. It can fit in your pocket, and it can do everything your other device could do. Apple completely destroyed the MP3 market with iPods. So Sony, I guess, thought they were going to do this. I don't know who they thought they were going to do it against, because they kind of had the handheld market already. I mean, sure, the DS was selling better, but the PSP sold very well. So I don't know what they really thought they were going to do with this device, because it's a little more than a revision, right? So here we have the PSP 2000, and you can see the optical media drive. You can see the design language on the back is a decent bit different than the 1000. This 1000 is much bulkier, it's much thicker, it has like a spring-loaded mechanism for the disk drive, or the other is just like a clamp. So they'd already changed the design language of the PSP several times. Whereas this thing's almost a completely different device, completely different layout. Yeah, it plays the same games, it has a lot of the same hardware. But it was like they were almost going for a different market. Like they were trying to go after the iPod market, or people who are attracted to those kind of small, handheld, all-digital devices. And needless to say, for games at the time, it did not go as well as they wanted it to, right? But the features of this device, in retrospect, are actually really cool. And the first one here that I'll show you, one of my favorites. So we have a PS1 game up here, Ridge Racer Type 4. Now, we have it filling the whole screen, which is something it actually shouldn't do. So let's get into one of the games here. I think this will be enough to display it. So we can press our PlayStation button right there to bring up the menu, which I really like this menu. And I really like the ability that you can quit or pause a game and then resume it later without saving the game or exiting the game, which is pretty cool. But the thing we want to show is, in other settings here, you can adjust the screen size, right? And now this is what it's supposed to look like, right here. It'll fill that much of your screen up. So already the PSP Go is a pretty small screen, even compared to the PSP. But PS1 games especially are not gonna look great on here, at least in terms of the aspect ratio. So you can bump that up a little bit and still keep the 4:3, then the native kind of resolution and scale of the image. But you can actually zoom it to fit the whole screen if you want. Now you can do the zoom, which is obviously going to cut some stuff off. Depending on the game you're playing, that might not be a big deal. But the full screen will actually fit the image properly to the screen. The only issue is it's just going to be a little squashed, a little stretched. But for a lot of games, that's not a huge deal. It's really cool that you can even do it. And if you want to, you can even adjust the location of the image. So you can move it to the left or the right, etc. if that's something you want to do. Nonetheless, it's really cool that you can do that. But as we said, with this device, it comes down to, at the time, it was about the storage, right? It was about, this is a 16 gigabyte device, first of all, which doesn't sound like a lot today, but back then a 16 gigabyte device wasn't too bad. Remember, iPhones sold 16 gigabyte and 32 gigabyte versions until like 5 years ago? And this came out, 15 years ago? 14, 15 years ago? So 16 gigabytes, not bad. Let's take a look at what you really get with 16 gigabytes. Because it's not really as little as you would think. Boot back into the menu, and let's take a look at our games. So, I got Tetris, Ridge Racer, which we were just in, Tactics Ogre, Tekken Dark Resurrection, Final Fantasy. Now these three here are PSP games. This is a PS1. This is a PSP Mini. And then we have more than that. We have also Ape Escape, PS1, Crash Team Racing, Pro Skater 2, Return Fire, Wargame Defcon 1, and Glover. All of these games we have on here. Granted, most of them are PS1. But let's go back here and see how much space we have left. So we still have 9.3 gigs left of that 16 gigabytes with how many games installed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games installed, and we still have well over half of our storage left, right? Now granted, most of these are PS1 games, so they're going to be smaller, but a lot of them aren't that much smaller than PSP games. Some of the biggest PSP games will run you maybe about a gigabyte, maybe just a little bit more. So even if you have some of the largest games on here, you're going to be able to fit at least 10 to 15 games on here, no issue. And if you're like me and you like playing a lot of more retro stuff, you can even get emulators on here for Game Boy Advance and things like that if you like. But I like a lot of PS1 stuff, so you could fit easily 20, 30, maybe even 40 PS1 games on here without any issue at all. And if you do actually need more space, there is a M2 slot here. Not a M2 SSD slot, but Sony's proprietary little thing here. And there are adapters out there for that, where you can just get an SD card, plug the adapter in, and increase your storage from 16 to 32 or 64, whatever you like for whatever you need. So this device, as you can see, much smaller than the PSP. No physical media, but it's a very interesting device, especially today. And it really makes me sad that Sony didn't continue on this trend of iterating. Maybe even come out with a PS Vita that was more like this, smaller, more pocketable form factor. Maybe even have a fun, folding or flipping design, especially now that we have displays that can do that. I really hope Sony tries again with something like that. Because imagine having a device like this with modern gaming, modern standards, right? It could be able to play easily, especially if Sony puts some on the store, but even if they don't, easily play PSP, PS1, PS2, probably some PS3, maybe a lot of PS3, and of course PS Vita games, as well as any other system if you want to go the emulation route, plus whatever the new games for the system will be. Imagine being able to play every Sony game on your library in a device like this up to PS4 and maybe even some PS4 games on something this small that you can take around with you. Now, are you going to want to play, God of War Ragnarok on something this size? Probably not. If it's a game like, I don't know, you just got Mortal Kombat, the new Mortal Kombat 1 that came out. Be able to take a device like this, play a couple rounds of it, put it back in your pocket. Now, you might say, well, yeah, that's cool, and it's small, and it's nice, and it has a cool sliding thing and whatever, but have you heard of the Switch and the Switch Lite? Well, here's the Switch, right? We can take a look at this. I love the Switch. This is the OLED one, the Zelda one. It's a heck of a lot bigger, even the Switch Lite. Like, look at these things side by side and tell me that the Switch is pocketable. It's not. Even the Switch Lite is not pocketable. But a device even like the Switch, which is obviously much more powerful than the PSP Go, it's just not there yet. It's not there yet in terms of the graphical ability. Now, Sony's going a different route than the Switch, or a different route than even the PSP Go. And they are going with the PlayStation Portal. If you've seen that, we're going to make a video on that when it comes out, which is more of a streaming device with some proprietary technology that the handheld connects directly to your PS5, doesn't need to use Wi-Fi. So there should, theoretically, if you're close enough to your PS5, not be any lag at all, which is really cool. But it's not a handheld, really. It's more of an extension of your PlayStation 5. That'll be an interesting device to see when it comes out. I don't know how well it's going to do. It's only priced at $199, but that's because it doesn't do anything but stream. It's not an Android device. It's not a gaming device like this, so you can play your own games on it. So it'll be very interesting to see how that device does, and I hope it doesn't ruin the possible future of Sony making a new actual handheld successor to the Vita, or I would just say call it the PSP 2 or something like that. We have PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why not PlayStation Portable 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc.? I don't know why they went to Vita, and I don't know why they abandoned that hardware so bad. But those are the things I really like about this device. It's pocketable, it's handheld, it has enough storage for you to put as much as you really want on it that you would ever play at one time. It's got really good sound, it's got a really good screen for its size. The ability to pause and resume games, to stretch or to fill the screen fully with PlayStation 1 games or other games that weren't designed to fit on a screen of this aspect ratio. And the battery life is really good for a device like this. Easily lasts you several days if you're only playing, an hour, hour and a half here or there. It's just an all-around fun device, and of course, the sliding feature. It's just fun. It's a fun device from an era when devices like this were supposed to be fun. Like, even think of the iPod like we were talking about. The circular dial that, that's kind of like a haptic wheel. That's just fun to mess with. I would like to go back to an era where devices are fun. Let me know what you guys think about this device, what you hope Sony does with the PSP or any kind of portable PlayStation in the future, what you think of the PlayStation Portal, as Project P is now called. Was it Project P? Project Q, there we go. So let me know what you think about that, and if you would like to see something like the PSP Go in the future, or even a PSP 2. With that, I thank you guys for watching. We'll see you all next time.